Now, if you're a fan of this channel or have been watching for a long period of time, you know that in many different times, at many different points, and in many different ways, I've said before that I dislike the story of Arknights. Yet, I still play this game, and I'm an individual who focuses quite a lot on stories and characterization, as you can see from some of my earlier videos. Now, right off the rip, I do want to clarify that point. I don't dislike the story of Arknights, I dislike how it's told. In comparison to Genshin Impact, Honkai Impact, and Blue Archive, Arknights takes the approach of walls of text. And walls of text can be very useful. They're quite fine. In a lot of ways, I think they're really great for just getting the information out to a player without having them sit through tons of different scenes and transitions that are really unnecessary. But Arknights also has the issue of there only being walls of text. See, with other games, there's something else to mitigate that effect. Genshin has a lot of cutscenes, Genshin has some voice-acted stuff, but a lot of times you don't get that in certain scenes of dialogue where it does want to info dump on you. And if you're talking about Blue Archive, well, you do get info dumps here and there, but a lot of times the characterization outside of just the main storyline does keep you interested a bit more. Blue Archive and Arknights take the very similar approach of giving you walls of text, but in terms of what they do outside of that, it differs quite a lot. See, if I desire to learn more about a character in Arknights, I have to read their character file, which is obviously a perfectly fair thing to do. And sure, they have the dialogue options, but there's not much that I can realistically learn about them through the dialogue that I'm given and through the character files. The character files have their backstory, has a lot of information on them, and that's perfectly fine. Once again, I don't mind that. But in comparison to the way Blue Archive does it, in comparison to the way Genshin Impact does it, there's a slight variation. Genshin Impact now has the hangouts. It also has the profiles and stories and voice lines that they give you. Alongside that, if you're an important character such as an Archon, you have an entire quest line dedicated to you, the Archon quests themselves, and you have those character quests, the character stories that they have outside of it. If we exclude that point, Blue Archive also gives you the events, which are usually centered around 1 to 2 characters or even a new group that you may be meeting soon. You then have the relationship quests you get, and then you also have the regular dialogue. You also have Cafe, which sort of allows you to interact with them a bit more here and there to see different animations, but ultimately that's not anything I would consider important. Arknights doesn't really have that. Sure, you have events which come around every now and again, but they don't necessarily feature a brand new character, or I suppose they don't necessarily feature the individual unit that you're interested in. So it's very hard to get a grasp on that if you've missed an event that's centered around that unit before. You also have the fact where if you're an Arknights player and let's say you really like Silver Ash, or maybe really like a older character or a lower rarity character, they're less inclined to be focused on, which is natural, don't get me wrong. However, contrary to something like Genshin where there's only really 2 rarities, you have the 4-star units and then you have the 5-star units without 6 stars, Arknights has so many different rarities that the lower down in that rarity list you go, the less important you are inclined to be. Now, I love some Arknights character. I love Mizuki. I love Suzerain. I like Lionheart. I like Ak. I essentially like the units that I essentially build up, and I understand that a lot of them aren't meta units, but I enjoy them. Lapland is one of my favorites. So I'm not an individual who's focused specifically on meta-based units, but I also really do want to learn more about my characters without having to read several walls of text or go into a discussion tab or a lore-based video around them. And I like lore, don't get me wrong. What I don't like it is when that lore is badly presented in a game to the extent where I have to go out of my way to find it. Unless it's in a game where that is the sole point. The Dark Souls series and Elden Ring don't necessarily give you that lore, they hide it here and there, and it's your job to find it if you want to. But the game is built from the ground up to have that featured in there, whereas Arknights dumps it on you and expects you to kind of understand it. Now, this is not to say the other forms of storytelling are perfect in any way, shape, or form. Genshin Impact has its odd scenario where it tries to lead you on a thread to find your sister, and ultimately, no one really cares. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand the plot line of the game could be much bigger, and I do like a lot of the characters. The Archon quests are great in my opinion, but I do not care about finding my sibling in this game. I don't even meet the sibling. I don't even know them. And so the fact that I'm supposed to be put into the traveler's shoes and care about their issues really takes me out of the game. Like, it's to the extent to where when a questline is centered around the traveler and around the sibling, I just outright zone out. I do not care the slightest for that. Like, out of all the storylines in the games, whether that be Blue Archive, Arknights, Genshin, Honkai, Counterside, Artery Gear Fusion, Azur Lane. I care the least about Genshin stories when it focuses on the Traveler, because I like Zhongli, I like Raiden, I like any other character. Blue Archive story takes a background approach in that you can do it separate from the missions in the game. So if you just want to farm materials and level up your units, all you have to do is just do that. You don't have to do the story at all. You have to do some missions here and there, but you're not absolutely required to progress in both of them at the same time, which I like. Ultimately, it does allow me and other players who maybe aren't as story focused or maybe just want to spend our stamina to focus on that aspect of the game and come back when we want to. I've mentioned this previously in a video titled Why I Love Blue Archive. Ultimately, Arknights, in my opinion, has one of the best OSTs and art styles of any gacha game I've ever played. In terms of OST and music, I think I put Blue Archive up there with it for certain OSTs and certain soundtracks. But excluding that, I think Arknights has an amazing style. I think the character design is on point. I think the skills and even the voices, at least from JP, is really good. I haven't really tried out the new EN voice lines, so I gotta see if I like those. But ultimately, Arknights, in my opinion, is an amazing gacha game. I can see where people play it. I don't like the gacha system, but I enjoy the game. But I do believe that can be said about any gacha game. I don't think anyone sits here looking at a gacha game and it's like, yeah, you know what? I really like burning money. So overall, if a game or a gacha game in particular is one that you can't get rid of the gacha aspect, and I do think it needs to succeed in other ways. Arknights often has a pedigree for being the one that's the most mentally straining, and not in a bad way. I mean that the game requires strategy and thought to complete. And to its benefit, this does mean the game is more involved. Even if the story itself is bad, you can rely on the gameplay to keep you entertained because it's not necessarily a one clear all type of content. You can't just get one unit and then instantaneously clear the game. Instead, you need a variety of units, each who have a better performing scenario for them and a worse performing scenario for them. You need to get them up to a decent level of investment. And then after that fact, you actually need to deploy them in the proper positions and understand that, hey, you need a healer nearby to keep them alive. You need to properly support them because certain opponents will take them out relatively quickly. And I do think that this works to Arknights' benefit because even if the game is more mentally involved, it keeps you invested not only into the characters because you understand that a unit is good, but it also keeps you involved in the events, into the story by a small degree. Obviously, you can skip it, but you don't have to. I think Arknights, in my opinion, if they were to have bumped up not only the story aspect, but also the development aspect in terms of characterization, to take some of the examples that Blue Archive has or that other gacha games have, in that it gives you more of a reason to legitimately care for a character, and it gives you more ways to learn about that than walls of text and event-locked content. If characters got their own story, or maybe you used them to a degree and after getting to a certain point of trust, you unlocked more or special missions with them, then I do think that would help me and many other people feel more attached to certain units, because as of right now, the only attachment we have is that they're sitting on a lobby menu, and that's it. And I do want the game to have more content. I do enjoy Arknights, and I know a lot of you do too, especially with the recent 2 Arknights videos doing really well. But I just wish it had more. Either way, I don't hate the game. I hope you don't either. And if you enjoyed, leave a like on the video. Join the Discord server down below because I will be doing weekly discussions, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.